True to its name, it was the Party of Democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money.
Welcome back to the Dvory Darkins show. In this video, breaking news, it is official. RFK Jr. Drops out of the presidential race and endorses former President Trump. And in doing so, he exposes the truth in a way that made CNN panic. And they had to cut away from his press conference because they don't want you or me or anybody to hear what RFK Jr. has to say. And when that happens, you know, that tells you that he's probably saying something that is of truth and that goes counter to what they want you to know.
At the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020 without winning a single delegate. My uncle and my father both relished debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe-to-toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days.
We've been listening to independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from Phoenix outlining what led him to his quixotic quest for the White House to now dropping out and relinquishing the title of Democrat. He had a series of complaints about the party. We're, of course, going to continue watching his remarks. There's a back and forth over whether he's going to endorse former President Donald Trump. We're going to break that down on the other side of a quick break. Stay with.
Yeah, so you see he was about to get into the messiness of the Democratic Party and how his uncles, if they saw what was going on today, they would roll over in their grave, of course, right? And it's just showing you how far left the Democratic Party has gone, to the point where someone like RFK Jr., who's been Democratic his entire life, Trump was Democrat his entire life. The fact that these individuals don't look at the Democrat Party the same like they did when they were growing up, it says a lot about that party. And this is what they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know how far left they've gone. That the things they accuse former President Trump of doing, the things they accuse RFK Jr. of doing, is exactly what they do. They project.
We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the Party of Democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president.
Yeah, so what he's talking about is a few things. Number one, that in the primary, the Democrats used every resource available to them to remove anybody who opposed President Biden from getting the nomination. And that is a very alarming thing. And then it led to what? President Biden doing the debate and then having to be forced to drop out, where the Democrats used I would say, unprofessional methods to make that happen. And then they obviously installed Kamala Harris, who did not have to face an open convention. And so they may minimize that, which they've done on the news. The Democrats will minimize that and say, well, you know, still people were voting for her because they were voting for Biden. The point is that the Democrat Party is no longer interested in true debate. They're no longer interested in putting forth a legitimate candidate because they've earned it, or because they went to an open convention and the best person won. They're more interested in selecting their candidate because they know that they will be able to control that said candidate.
In April of 2022, President Biden sent Boris Johnson to Ukraine to force President Zelensky to tear up a peace agreement that he and the Russians had already signed, and the Russians were withdrawing troops from Kiev and Donbass and Lugansk. And that peace agreement would have brought peace to the region and would have allowed Donbass and Lugansk to remain part of Ukraine. President Biden stated that month that his objective in the war was regime change in Russia. His Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, simultaneously explained that America's purpose in the war was to exhaust the Russian army, to degrade its capacity to fight anywhere else in the world. These objectives, of course, have nothing to do with what they were telling Americans about protecting Ukraine's sovereignty.
Yeah, and the point that he's making, again, this is the Democratic Party. They go out and they tell Americans, oh, Vladimir Putin, he's an evil person. We have to stop him. Yeah, but when they had a peace agreement on the table that Vladimir Putin and Zelensky agreed to and signed, you sent Americans over there to tear up that agreement. Why? The military complex. This is why I never supported Nikki Haley. This is the only problem I really have with her. It's because I know if she was the nominee, they would keep pushing this whole Ukraine bullshit. Okay? Because what's happening is they're sending billions of dollars over there, knowing that it could have been over by now, when that same amount of money could be used in this country for people who need it, and the amount of lives that have been lost because they tore up that agreement. They say 500,000 people on the Ukraine side, 600,000 people on the Russia side. That both of these countries are technically victims of this war. It's a sad tragedy, really. But this is who they want you to vote for.
The processed food companies, they're deciding what Americans, hear is healthy, and the recommendations on the food pyramid, and what goes to our school lunch programs, what go to the program, the Swiss program, the food stamp programs. They're all corrupted and conflicted individuals. These agencies, the FDA, USDA, and CDC, all of them are controlled by giant for-profit corporations. 75% of the FDA's funding doesn't come from taxpayer, it comes from pharma. And pharma executives and consultants and lobbyists cycle in and out of these agencies with President Trump's backing. I'm going to change that. We're going to staff these agencies with honest scientists.
Now, this is much more dear to my heart because I've always been a person that has believed that the real killer in America is not mass shootings. It's not illegal migrants. It's not firearms. It's our food. And the food that we're eating today is not the same food that our grandparents ate. So yes, we have grandparents who have lived to be 80, 90, 100 years old. So we're thinking, oh, well, if they've lived that long, I should be able to live that long. No. They ate different food. They came up with different food. They didn't eat the same food that we're eating today. Our food today is ultra processed, widely manufactured. And the ingredients that are in our food is not the same ingredients that Europe allows in their food. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells you a few things. Number one, they want us to be sick because it allows them to make more money. And if they can make more money, they can have more power. They can have more say in what they want to happen. And at that level, we have to understand everybody's a walking conflict of interest. Okay? It just is what it is. Now, that sounds terrible and doom and gloom. So there has to be something we could do about it, right? Well, we have to stand up to these types of attacks from the government on the everyday Americans. We have to get very smart about our choices on what we eat, what we consume, what we give our attention to. I'm a firm believer that you should be buying more organic. You should stay away from processed food. Stop buying stuff in boxes. Stop buying stuff that, is not alive. Like lean more towards vegetables, lean more towards whole food, plant-based. Because at this point, you're not eating the same food your grandparents were eating. Now, as I wrap up this video, I want to leave you guys with some facts. Because it's a serious issue, more serious than a lot of this the fear mongering that happens on both sides. The number one killer of Americans is heart disease. Why does heart disease happen? It happens because of what we eat. Cancer. Why does cancer happen? It's because of what we eat. It's what we consume. Nowhere on this list, what is this? The top 10? Nowhere on this list do you see firearms, violence, murders. You don't see any of that. It's what we're eating. It's so Big Pharma can make more money. So we have to stand up. I mean, what RFK Jr. is onto, no wonder they silenced him. No wonder. Because he is what? He's a threat to their ability to make more and more and more money for themselves and to expand their power. So my takeaways are this. I really do hope that former President Trump takes RFK Jr. very seriously and gives him the power to impact change in our government, especially when it comes to our food system. I think that is, if he doesn't do that, I will definitely criticize him up and down for that. 2, RFK Jr., no wonder he is an independent, because everything that he's talking about, everything that he represents is not the way that the Democrat Party is today. Now, they may have been that way 20 years ago. And I say this a lot. If you were a Democrat in the 90s, technically you're a conservative today. It's not the same values anymore. It just isn't. And 3, at a certain level, this should make you very angry. It should. I don't even care what side you're on, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent. You should be absolutely furious at the Democrat Party and what they've done to RFK Jr., how they've silenced him. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that he couldn't make it on certain ballots, to make sure that he wasn't going to be able to debate. And this includes, we already know, the fake news media. They're in on it too, because it's the perfect example on why I preach policy over personality. That's my mindset. What's yours? What do you guys think about the RFK Jr. speech and the official announcement that he has now endorsed former President Trump, that he absolutely destroyed the Democratic Party, called them out, exposed them for their undemocratic ways, and how they don't want him to be a part of this process because he exposes the truth about how they're killing Americans and wasting our money on wars overseas. Let me know what your thoughts are and more in the comment section below. Thank you for checking out the video today. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stay grateful, stay focused, and stay true. Peace.